That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, so we updated our rankings on Patreon earlier this week, and I wanted to go through and give an explanation of why a couple of these players had to go through and fall down the rankings. Now, I'm not saying that I'm trading away every single one of these guys. Of course, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the entire Dynasty community, including myself, we need to view these players in a little bit of a different light, and we can still possibly say, hey, it's time to sell low on an option like DK Metcalf, or maybe it's time to buy low. We're going to go case by case with each player. But of course, before we dive into it, please go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, let me know why I am stupid and why none of these players should be falling down rankings. And of course, if you want to join an awesome community of Dynasty fantasy football players, get involved with us with Dynasty leagues, Dynasty rankings, rookie rankings, Dynasty group chats. I mean, an in-depth podcast breaking down your Dynasty team when you join by yours truly. Of course, that can be found on Patreon. Everybody knows in the description of the video. I think that should be it. Let's go through. Let's dive into this list. And this is a player that, of course, has already fallen down so much since the beginning of the season. And I know that a lot of people are going to say, oh, wait, is Mason recording this in February, or is he recording this way back in October when he was disappointing time and time again? But Allen Robinson is a player that if you pull up our rankings, you are going to see that yet again, we have dropped him even further, despite Allen Robinson not taking the field over the past month. And if you've joined Patreon as of late and you had Allen Robinson on your Dynasty team, you probably heard this advice already. You probably heard me go over this, saying with Allen Robinson, the second that he signs to a new NFL team, I'm going through and I'm looking to sell. If you look at our rankings with where we currently have him, we have him as damn near a wide receiver 5 in Dynasty. We have Allen Robinson ranked behind Christian Kirk, Gabriel Davis, Rondale Moore, Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods. Honestly, why the hell do I have Allen Robinson ahead of Juju Smith-Schuster? Well, we're throwing Juju ahead of him right now as well as when we record this video. With Allen Robinson, just to go through and to revisit how bad he failed this season. It was, I mean, in spectacular fashion. Now, I understand, and I am with you. You know that I wasn't drafting Justin Fields. I don't think Justin Fields is a great NFL quarterback. I don't think Matt Nagy was a halfway decent NFL coach, but we can't blame everything on the situation for Allen Robinson. I think for us to go through and to project him to completely turn around his NFL career on a new team, it's aggressive to say the least. And the reason for this is there was another wide receiver with this same coach, with this same quarterback that was able to, I don't want to say succeed in this environment, but was able to have a significantly better season than Allen Robinson. With Allen Robinson, if you look at just the mark, let's do this with both Allen Robinson and Darnell Mooney. If you look at the mark of 40 receiving yards per game, which I think that we can all say, if you get to 40 receiving yards, that's not even impressive. You need, I mean, at least a touchdown and preferably about 6 receptions as well in that same game if you only get to 40 receiving yards to put up a decent game in fantasy. So 40 receiving yards is the bare minimum threshold for a player to begin, becoming appealing for your starting lineup. Allen Robinson, games over 40 yards this past season, 3. And I know he suffered an injury. I know Allen Robinson didn't play the entire year, but games under 40 receiving yards this year, 9. That is unbelievable if you look at Darnell Mooney as well. With that same threshold, Darnell Mooney went 11 games over, only 6 games under. So with Darnell Mooney, this was a wide receiver that was able to consistently at least get to a respectable mark in, while yes, one of the worst passing offenses in the NFL. I understand that most people, including myself, trust me, I liked Allen Robinson coming into this past year. I don't know why, because I didn't like Justin Fields. I didn't like Matt Nagy. I don't know how I tried to convince myself into Allen Robinson, but I'm the first person to admit we were wrong. We can't just sit here and blame this on the Chicago Bears situation. And if we look at potential landing spots across the entire NFL right now for Allen Robinson to land in and his value just to skyrocket, it isn't great. I'll say if he does land in somewhere like Miami, of course, if he goes to Green Bay, people are going to be excited. But even somewhere like Detroit, his value is going to get a short uptick. We've talked about this time and time again. It shouldn't happen this way, but dynasty fantasy football players are crazy. And that the second that we get to free agency and you have those star wide receivers like Allen Robinson signing, you are going to get an immediate uptick with their dynasty value just for about a week or two, because you're going to have every dynasty league chat, every dynasty group chat, every dynasty YouTube video, every dynasty podcast, every dynasty website writing articles. They're all going to be talking about the free agent class for that 1 week. So you're going to be able to find a single sucker in your dynasty league to possibly go out there. And I mean, if we could trade Allen Robinson and we could get back in return a wide receiver like Michael Gallup, sign me up, because remember, Robinson was drafted in 2014. It isn't exactly a spring chicken anymore. Now let's go over to someone that's actually falling based on his performance over the past month for a lot of dynasty players. And this is going to be CeeDee Lamb. Now with CeeDee Lamb, I understand it. Yes, he went from being an elite alpha wide receiver, not in real life, but from a dynasty perspective. If you looked at anybody's dynasty rankings, it was consensus. CeeDee Lamb was a top 5 dynasty wide receiver not that long ago, and I was there with everybody else. I don't know why I was willing to just completely overlook the lack of production that we had halfway through last season and just say, hey, CeeDee Lamb's a stud, a very productive offense, and ignore the exact numbers. Because with CeeDee Lamb this past season ends up being the wide receiver 16, and one game that everybody's going to be looking at, and of course everybody on Twitter, everybody in the Flock Discord chat was kind of just dogging CeeDee Lamb for that playoff performance against the 49ers, where he had a total of 1 reception for 21 receiving yards. Now, with Lamb, I'm not dropping him outside our top 12 wide receivers. I'm not even dropping him outside our top 10 wide receivers. I actually have CeeDee Lamb in the same tier in our dynasty rankings as Jalen Waddle and Deebo Samuel. But I think he is clearly below those elite veteran players like Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, even with them being significantly older. And one reason I think that CeeDee Lamb may actually be an intriguing buy low candidate, with everybody in the dynasty community all of a sudden just flipping a switch and going from being way too bullish on CeeDee Lamb to now, in my opinion, maybe a little bit too bearish, because we already had people in the Patreon community telling me I had CeeDee Lamb too high in these rankings in the same tier as Deebo and Jalen Waddle, is the age of CeeDee Lamb. Now, a lot of people forget this because, of course, CeeDee Lamb's about to be going into year 3. But if you look at Lamb, he's only 22 years old. He's incredibly young. If we're just going across the NFL and looking at players that are currently older than CeeDee Lamb that you wouldn't expect, you have a lot of players in this last draft class. I mean, a player that we just mentioned being ranked in the same tier as him on Patreon is going to be Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle's actually older than CeeDee Lamb. Now, to stick it with that same draft class, you got Devonta Smith, older than CeeDee Lamb. Kadarius Toney, older than CeeDee Lamb. Najee Harris, of course, he's always the name you can go to. He's just so damn old. As well as Travis Etienne. Lamb is still an incredibly young wide receiver that we should expect to continue to get better through his NFL career. And if you look at the situation in Dallas, this is still a team that, I mean, was number 1 in the NFL last year in points scored per game. I believe that was the statistic coming out of the regular season. If not number 1, they were easily top 3. And if you're looking at that Michael Gallup injury, that is significant. You also have Dalton Schultz as a free agent this offseason. And I would be very surprised if this is a team that goes and pursues a free agent wide receiver. I mean, clearly it's one of the best wide receiver cores in the NFL. Now, Amari Cooper is still pretty damn young for being drafted in 2015, but at the end of the day, Amari Cooper is going into year 7 here, and CeeDee Lamb's younger than Jalen Waddle. So I think CeeDee Lamb's going to continue to progress, continue to expand his target share in this offense. So I'm still going to have him as a mid wide receiver 1 in Dynasty, but I think he's no longer a part of that elite tier, and there's no way in hell that you can decide to take CeeDee Lamb in the first round of your Dynasty startup draft. Now, our next wide receiver is almost the exact opposite of Deontay Johnson. Funny because they were in the same draft class, both in 2019. But I mean, a couple weeks ago, I tweeted out Deontay Johnson's a wide receiver that every single time I look at my rankings, I feel like, oh crap, I should probably have him a little bit higher than this. I should probably move him up a little. Well, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, DK Metcalf is a wide receiver that every time I pull up these dynasty rankings, I go, is DK Metcalf too high here? Do I have to move DK Metcalf down? Because there's, a laundry list of things that are going against DK Metcalf and his current dynasty value at this moment. Starting off with DK Metcalf, he's coming off of the worst year in his NFL career. I know it's a short career, but still, he was the wide receiver 30 on a points per game basis. And the reason that a player like Chase Claypool, I'm not dramatically moving down our dynasty rankings, is if you look at Claypool, pretty much all the underlying metrics are very similar compared to his rookie season, despite his touchdown rate cratered. And what's the number one thing in fantasy football that is just completely volatile season to season? That's going to be the touchdown rate of a singular wide receiver. Whereas with DK Metcalf, while he was the wide receiver 30 on a points per game basis, he had no issue scoring touchdowns. He had almost a 10% touchdown rate with 12 touchdowns this season off of 129 targets. That's a mark that, I want to say is probably not going to be sustainable. While, of course, DK Metcalf, you're assuming he's going to score touchdowns at a higher rate than league average based on just the frame that he has. Are we sure he's going to be scoring a touchdown on 1 out of every 10 targets? I'm not expecting that. To go along with this, with DK Metcalf, obviously you have the Russell Wilson situation in Seattle this offseason. We don't know if Wilson is going to be there for 2022. With Russell Wilson, he had, the issues with the Seattle Seahawks last offseason, and after his worst year of his NFL career, I can't imagine it's that much better. So Metcalf could be getting a significant downgrade at quarterback, because don't fool yourself. There's no way in hell that the Seattle Seahawks move on from Russell Wilson and find a better solution through trade. Tua Tagovailoa, I think we can all say, is significantly worse than Russell Wilson if they go that route, or through the NFL draft if they go through and get the 11th pick or whatever it is from the Denver Broncos and think they can take Matt Corral. Whatever their answer may be at the position, if they do decide to make a trade, it's going to be worse than Russell Wilson. So there's only downside at the quarterback position as well. So if we go over and we look at our dynasty rankings, DK Metcalf was someone that we had near that top 5 option. Now, we had to dramatically move him down to where he is back-to-back in these rankings with T. Higgins. And I'm sitting here going, I don't know if we can have Metcalf ahead of T. Higgins. We had to move Deontay Johnson ahead of DK Metcalf. And with Metcalf, what's the argument? I feel like every time I'm reluctant to move DK Metcalf down these rankings, like I said in yesterday's video, it's like I'm just a caveman. It's like my lizard brain going, DK Metcalf big, DK Metcalf fast, DK Metcalf good, me draft DK Metcalf. Like, that's all it is with DK Metcalf at this point. I feel like we have to continue to drop him down. I would love to know your opinion, whether it's on Patreon. Of course, by the way, on Patreon, please, with my rankings. I always ask for this. I'm sure y'all know this by now, but give me your feedback. Go and leave a comment. Let me know your opinion, because a lot of what changes these rankings on just a week-to-week basis is people going down there and telling me, Mason, you got to relook at Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson has to be higher. And me going, okay, well, let's look at this. Let's rethink this. And a lot of times, y'all are right. A lot of times I'm wrong. So please use that comment feature and let me know your opinion. But let's go down to our next player, running back position here. Not much to say. Clyde Edwards-Helaire just looking so damn bad in Kansas City. I've been very polarized on Clyde Edwards-Helaire throughout his career. This is a player that once he got drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs in round 1, I called him bust-proof. I was saying, hell, he's stepping into the best situation you could find. Of course, from a talent perspective, you can't argue that he's up there with those other running backs in that draft class, someone like a Jonathan Taylor from a prospect profile standpoint. But if you were looking at the situation that he had and what was everybody saying with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, this is the one reason that I think CEH at this point is damn near just dead in the water. And I was not willing to say this until we saw the playoff stretch this season. But one thing that everybody and their mom knew about Clyde Edwards-Helaire is that he was a fantastic NFL pass-catching running back. Well, what the hell has happened? His first season, you get 36 receptions. Nothing special. Nothing special at all. This past year, you get 19 receptions in the regular season. then to go to the playoffs. Now, this is why I was reluctant to say if Clyde Edwards-Helaire was going to be a player that I'm just full-blown panic selling on. Because, of course, remember, after this season, anybody that was telling you go sell high on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that's garbage advice, because who the hell's paying you anything for Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Nobody's trading anything for CEH. Okay, so if someone's telling you sell high on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, what are we listening to? But I didn't know if we were going to say buy low or not, because I was looking at this situation saying, well, they're paying Patrick Mahomes $50 million a year, and to go along with this, I mean, they have a lot of holes in this roster. They have positions that they need to address in the NFL draft. They really don't have the luxury of going through and bringing in James Conner and going and drafting a player like Isaiah Spiller in the 3rd round. So, I mean, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, his role looked pretty damn safe this upcoming season. A lot safer than someone like James Conner himself, where you have no idea what team he's going to be on. At least with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you know he's going to be with Patrick Mahomes. But what we saw in the playoffs is one of the very few players that I'm saying, let's look at the small sample. Let's look at what happened in the playoffs when everything mattered in what was the deployment of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. In the 2 games that he played, 13 carries and 2 receptions. That's laughable. That's a combined 2 games. Those aren't averages. The combined 2 games, 13 carries and 2 receptions. Now, if you look at Jerick McKinnon's playoff stats, it's going to be a little bit skewed because, of course, he played that first week against the Pittsburgh Steelers with no Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I removed that week. We are just looking at the weeks played alongside Clyde Edwards-Helaire for Jerick McKinnon, where you had 22 carries and 8 receptions. So if Jerick McKinnon can come out and he can be the feature down running back over Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm fine. If you want to go and say sell low on CH, if you want to just pivot off, I'm fine with you doing so. We had to continuously move him lower in our rankings, even though he's going to have a role with this offense this upcoming season. What's the real upside? Because if another running back goes down in this backfield, they can pick up someone like Jerick McKinnon from the streets. I know McKinnon was with them all season. Trust me, I get it, yada, yada, yada. But still, he's, just a replacement level running back. I don't see much upside with CEH. We've moved him down to where he is now a running back 3 in our dynasty rankings. It's frustrating because this is a player that's so damn young and he's in the best situation you could ask for. He's playing with Patrick Mahomes and his number one just competition for target is literally Jerick McKinnon. He's 22 years old. RIP, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, our next guy we're going to be talking about, another very young player, Mac Jones. Now, with Mac Jones, I was excited. After his rookie season, we came out, we ranked him as, I believe, a mid to high-end quarterback 2 in Dynasty. Let me see where I have him now. Yeah, I had Mac Jones that high-end quarterback 2 in Dynasty, and I've consistently just dropped him one spot. I feel like he's just moving down the ladder surely but slowly. And here he is sitting at quarterback 16. Recently moved him behind Justin Fields, behind Jalen Hurts. And with Mac Jones, what you love about him in a super flex perspective is the job security that he has. Based on how good he looked his rookie season, I would be, shocked if this team looked anywhere but Mac Jones as their starting quarterback for the future. But with that being said, we have to look at what happened his rookie season. And of course, Mac Jones can develop even further. They could change this offense. But his rookie season, they had 521 pass attempts and 489 rushing attempts. It was an almost 1-for-1 pass to rush ratio. And of course, there's some funny games skewed in there where they beat the Jets by 50 points, where they play Buffalo and they don't attempt a single pass, maybe 3 passes, whatever the hell it was. But still, at the end of the day, Mac Jones, his rookie year, was the quarterback 28 on a per game basis. And the reason for this is Mac Jones had no rushing upside whatsoever. And what have we talked about time and time again? I don't need to see you be Lamar Jackson. I don't need to see you be Jalen Hurts. You don't need to be Kyler Murray. You don't need to be those elite level quarterbacks in fantasy when it comes to rushing. But for you to have the ability to be able to get to, say, Justin Herbert's 350 rushing yards, that is massive in just giving you, that little edge to be able to go from being a low-end quarterback 2 to being a low-end quarterback 1. That's a massive difference through the course of the entire season. where Mac Jones showed us he has no rushing upside whatsoever. So for him to elevate his game in fantasy, he's going to have to become Matthew Stafford. He's going to have to become Tom Brady. He's going to have to become those guys that are elite pocket passing options. I don't see it with Mac Jones. The supporting cast isn't there. This is, I don't want to say always going to be a rush first team, but they are going to look to run the ball. And as we discussed time and time again, age simply does not matter at the quarterback position. So I really don't have any interest if he's not really going to check any of the boxes that we look for to have that elite level ceiling. And really the number one calling card that you have with him is his age and the promise to develop. I'm probably just going to be cashing out on Mac Jones. If we can talk about some options to go and pivot over to, if we could trade Mac Jones for Ryan Tannehill and get a small piece on top, I would love to do that. Sign me up for that trade every single day. But of course, thank you so much for being a part of the flock and supporting the channel. As always, go down there, drop that like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to join an awesome community of Dynasty Fantasy Football players, you can do that with the link down below, where you can also find our rankings, whether that's startup rankings, rookie rankings. You can get into Dynasty leagues with us. You can get, an in-depth podcast breaking down you know what there is. But of course, thank you so much and have a great day.